We want to turn now to the German elections, very consequential elections for what the future of Europe could look like, what Europe-U.S. Relations will look like, what could happen with the war in Ukraine. So a lot at stake here in Germany's upcoming elections. And we are very, very honored to be joined once again on the show by Sevim Dağdelen, who is a member of the Bundestag in Germany for the Alliance Sahra Wagenknecht party and the foreign policy spokesperson for that party. As always, Sevim, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi, Rania. Hi, Eugene. I'm very pleased to be here.
Well, as always, it's great to have you. And as I'm sure you know well, Americans are hearing a lot about the German elections because Elon Musk has become a big supporter of the AfD, but we hear very little about the BSW. So that's where I wanted to start, just to get a sense of, how are you all seeing the challenges facing in Germany and some of the issues you're highlighting for voters in the run-up to the polls?
Well, as you said, you don't hear much about the situation. The German economy is undergoing a heavy crisis at the moment. And the situation is characterized by economic stagnation. So among industrialized countries, Germany is at the bottom of the table when it comes to economic growth. Mass layoffs are now also on the cards in many companies, and not only in the car industry. So during the ongoing budget discussions, it has become abundantly clear that the federal budget is dangerously overstretched. Germany cannot shoulder the impacts of this self-destructive economic war against Russia, of rearmament on a massive scale in the context of NATO, and of military support for Ukraine, which has cost 37 billion euro alone over the past 2 years just for the military aid to Ukraine. And the sanctions, they cost us, the economy in Germany, about 200 billion euro. So this economic plight is being further worsened by corresponding cuts to education, infrastructure, and social services. So furthermore, 1 in 6 people in Germany is at risk of poverty at the moment. So these massive burdens are destroying the middle class and threaten to push millions more people in Germany into social decline. And the problem is the broken coalition consisting of the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the Liberals and supported by the Christian Democrats, has had a disastrous economic policy record over the last 3 years, with the economic war against Russia and a failed energy policy of high prices, for example. These parties have been at the helm of a truly process of deindustrialization, saying in order to avoid having to import energy directly from Russia, cheap energy, by the way, German companies have, for example, imported Russian energy at significantly higher prices via India and Belgium as LNG gas. So not the pipeline, the cheap pipeline gas we are importing. No, we are importing LNG fracking gas from Russia through India, Belgium, Netherlands, and sometimes even Azerbaijan. And in the course of their friendly support for the United States policy of confrontation, the second pillar of the German industry's international competitiveness is now also at risk of being destroyed after cutting off cheap energy supplies from Russia, a move that only backfired on Germany. The country now wants to get involved in US-American sanctions against China. And if this happens, it will inescapably lead to the destruction of trade relations with Germany's second largest trading partner, China. And that's really a disaster for Germany. So we are witnessing a process of deindustrialization that calls into question the entire development of Germany after 1870, including the German welfare state model, which will now come under even greater pressure. And this is the situation we are facing at the moment. That's why BSW is we are committed to putting, we say, the existing Nord Stream pipeline into operation again, in repairing the destroyed lines so that we can have once again get cheap and competitive gas from Russia. This is good for the population to lower the high energy prices, and it's good for the industry.
Sevim, since you mentioned Russia, BSW leaders such as yourself have been outspoken voices about the need to seek a peaceful settlement in Ukraine. So, how important is ending that war for addressing many of the other critical challenges, much of which you just mentioned, like the rising cost of living and economic growth?
Well, for us, I think it's an existential question. And that's why the federal elections on the upcoming Sunday are existential for us, because we are currently conducting the decisive election campaign of the last decades, because war is back in Europe. The danger is far from over. For 3 years now, we have had to endure insults for demanding a ceasefire and peace negotiations. We from Sahra Wagenknecht Alliance for 3 years. I bet you know this method. For 3 years, they have told us that we are Putin trolls, Kremlin party, Moscow friends, Moscow assets, and so on. But I do believe that the agreement to open peace talks and the first meeting in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia are to be welcomed without reservation. So this agreement opens up a perspective for an end to the killing and dying in Ukraine. And every day that the slaughter continues, there is one day too many. So, but while the American President Trump, and that's the insanity of Europe, while the American President Donald Trump is negotiating with Russia about peace in Ukraine, what are the Europeans doing? And the German federal government and maybe the presumed next Chancellor Friedrich Merz from the Christian Democratic Party, they want to continue the war alone. 700 billion euros are to be mobilized for this after the election. It came out by chance that our genius Minister of Foreign Affairs, Annalena Baerbock from the Green Party, she just said it by chance, that they are planning a 700 billion package. That means, and while Trump and Putin are agreeing on joint projects in the Arctic, the European Union wants to intensify the economic war. They just finished the 16th package of sanctions against Russia, while Trump is saying that he is lifting the sanctions for 20 banks of Russia. So I can only warn against undermining the agreement on peace talks. So Germany must not continue to be and that's another problem we are facing. The danger that Germany and Europe has to be the paymaster for Ukraine, and this will be at the expense of our children and our pensioners. A real bloodbath of cuts in our country's social services is looming here. So that's why we as BSW say we need an independent German foreign policy, independent from the US policy, and we are calling also for a halt to the financial gifts to Ukraine. And just one thing I would like to add: as much we welcome this agreement for peace talks between Russia and US, as much we are criticizing that Germany is going to be the payer for Ukraine, and also the poisoned proposal of the US administration that the Europeans, and especially the Germans here, have to secure the border between Ukraine and Russia in case of a ceasefire. You have to know the border of Ukraine and Russia, it is about 2,000 kilometers long. And it's just insane to think that Germany, with our background, with our historical background, could do such a job. And I think it's practically not possible anyway. It's a mission impossible, and that's why it's poisoned.
Mm. Well, this conversation about the potential into the Ukraine war has raised a lot of other issues, especially what is the sort of U.S. European, U.S. German, U.S. French, what are the relations going to be between the U.S. and Europe? I mean, it seems that the whole conversation is revolving around militarism, is basically what should the future of NATO be and the relationship there. But given the long relations between our two continents and the various nations, I mean, I wonder how you all in BSW are seeing this conversation. What should a U.S.-European relationship look like? How could it be more productive?
Well, we are not against the United States of America. It's our biggest trading partner. And we do believe as BSW that we need good relations to all the superpowers and the big powers. So that means we have to have good relations to the United States, to China, to Russia, and of course to India, to Indonesia, to South Africa, and to Brazil as well. So this must be our interest. It's our own original interest to have good relations to big powers. And on the European soil, it has to be a very original interest to have a good neighborhood. That we are a folks, a population of good neighbors. That means, you can change some things in the world, but you cannot change the geography. And Russia is part of Europe. So that means we need good relations to our neighbor, Europe, as President Trump stated, between Europe and the US is a big ocean. So they are pretty far away. But the thing is, Russia is just on our next doors. That means we need a good relations, and good relations mean we have to have good trade also. We have good social contacts, and because we do like this and we do need this, we have to have a independent, more sovereign foreign policy in Europe. But that doesn't mean like the one from Macron, because Macron is just following a neo-colonialist and militarized foreign policy. We need more Charles de Gaulle here in Europe. That means more sovereignty. So we do not need, for example, the 40,000 US troops on German soil. We do not need the nuclear bombs of the US on German soil. They can take them away and take them back home, but we want to have good relations. And in regard to the NATO, I do believe that it's more than time to abandon NATO and dismantle NATO. We need in Europe, we need our own security order, our own security architecture, including Russia, because security is only possible if it's a common security, if it is a common security which includes Russia. Security without or security against Russia is not possible in the European continent, and that's what we have seen in the last 3 years. Of course, we have to consider the pretext and the prehistory of this conflict, but also we can see there is no security possible without or against Russia, and that's why I think we need our own security architecture, not following the US, what is throwing the allies and the vessels under the bus whenever they want to, because if it's in their interest, but we have to follow our own interests, and our interest must be to have good relations here in the neighborhood.
Speaking directly to the issue of the AfD, Sevim, as I'm sure you know, there are people like Elon Musk who are presenting AfD to Americans as this anti-systemic force that's disrupting the neoliberal status quo. Do you think that that's a fair depiction?
No, not at all, Rania. The AfD is certainly not an anti-system party or systemic party. Its program stands for radical neoliberal politics. It stands for oligarchs like Elon Musk. Sure, the AfD, like the Sahra Wagenknecht Alliance, is in favor of a ceasefire and peace negotiations in Ukraine. But that's where the self-proclaimed peace party or opposition party or alternative ends. So like the government parties, and the conservatives, and even the left party here, the AfD supports the genocide in the Gaza Strip and the arms deliveries from the Federal Republic of Germany to the right-wing government of Netanyahu in Israel. So it defends policy spokesman, the arms lobbyist, Colonel Lucassen, said, for example, quote, full support during the anti-terror operation, even if it leads to unpleasant images, quote end. So in contrast to the BSW, the AfD supports military operations by the German arms abroad if they serve German interests, they say. The AfD supported the admission of Sweden and Finland into NATO. So the AfD is a pro-NATO party. And AfD leader Alice Weidel, who is supported by Elon Musk, believes that Germany must spend 5% or even more on military armament. So this disqualifies the party once and for all. The gross national product was 4 billion euros, and the federal budget last year was 470 billion euros. So the Alice Weidel, therefore, believes it is right to spend over 40% of the federal budget on armament. That means more than 220 billion every year for armament. That's what Trump, by the way, wanted from the NATO states in Europe. And at the same time, Alice Weidel and the AfD, they insist on maintaining the debt brake and want to cut taxes on a large scale. So anyone who can do basic arithmetic knows that this doesn't add up. So, but what is much more worse is that even if her demands are only partially implemented, Alice Weidel is calling for large-scale social cuts. So this would make one of the most important articles of our constitution obsolete. So the Article 20 states, the Federal Republic of Germany is a democratic and social constitutional state. And armament mania and social cuts are two sides of the same coin. So the AfD's plans would lead to considerable losses for employees, the unemployed, and pensioners in Germany. And as we already know from the policies of the old parties, the US oligarchs will certainly be able to cope well with such a party, as we can see, but to the detriment of the population in Germany. So Elon Musk is not very anti-systemic. He is using the state structure, the country, for his interests, and that is what he sees as an anti-systemic party. If you consider this as anti-systemic, like Elon Musk, okay, AfD would do the same, a little bit of this, but normally they are just neoliberal militarist party like the other ones.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sevim, as always, we really appreciate you helping sort through all of this. The eyes of the world are going to be on Germany this upcoming Sunday. You are the foreign policy spokesperson for the BSW. And also, I must add, author of NATO, A Reckoning with the Atlantic Alliance, which you can buy at 1804books.com here in the States. But as always, thank you so much for some of your time here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you so much. The countdown is on for Sunday. And keep up the good work, Rania and Eugene. See you
Excellent.
soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.